We all know the Cardinals have a few bats that would fit well in Seattle, but like we've said time and time again, they're just not worth one of the Mariners' young major league starters. So, is there a way to work around that? Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on the show today, we'll go over some moves the Mariners should make sooner rather than later. We'll also tackle the Mariners Cardinals trade rumors again with a, let's say, different idea to land one of those bats from St. Louis. But first, Colby, we unfortunately have to talk about last night's game. Let's start with Bryan Woo, the decision to leave him in the game entering the fourth inning, which is something you took issue with. I took issue with. I get your bullpen is light. Totally understand that. Totally understand that some guys weren't available last night. That said, you have a young starter who hasn't pitched in 10 days, 9 days, something like that, has already blown past his career high in innings pitched at the professional level, and clearly just doesn't have it. Some really spotty command. I mean, his stuff looked mostly great, and at times he was able to dot up the corner, didn't get some calls that he probably should have, but still, he just did not have it. You messaged me last night. You said he looks uncomfortable out there, and I agreed. I thought he did look uncomfortable on the mound last night, and his defense has not given him any support really whatsoever. It was a really sloppy game for the Mariners overall, not just defensively, but on the base pass as well. Just a bad night as a whole. But again, you got to give your young starter a life raft. And I felt like Scott Servais and company did not do what was in the best interests of Bryan Woo last night. Do you agree?
Yeah, Scott Servais failed his ball club and he failed his young pitcher, all with one decision. He played his stupid little game that Scott has played quite a few times this year, and it's seemingly every single time he's won his stupid little price at the cost of a game. Remember the Bryce Miller game against the Yankees, where somehow, some way, they were still in that game, despite Bryce Miller really struggling. It was a winnable game, and he tried to squeeze a couple more outs out of Miller, and the game was over like 10 pitches later. Same thing happened last night. He had a shot to win that game still, despite Bryan Woo being just bad. He was bad. Like, there's just no sugarcoating this. He ran a lot of deep counts. He didn't have pinpoint control or command, really. Yeah, he got screwed a couple times. Who cares? You have to overcome that. That's going to happen to every single pitcher. He did not have it. I told you he looked uncomfortable from in the first inning. Like, this wasn't something that, like, he was cruising and then all of a sudden he started to struggle. You could see it right away. He was not comfortable last night, and Scott had to play his stupid little game. It's a 5-3 game. You got 3 out of him. Oh, maybe I could really try and squeeze 4 or whatever. And all you did was lose the game for your club. It was over. It was over at 7-3. And your grand prize for essentially kicking a game in the middle of a playoff race is you got 1 extra out that your bullpen didn't need to get. Scott screwed the Mariners last night, and he screwed Bryan Woo by leaving him out there when he's clearly not feeling 100%, when he's clearly throwing a ton of pitches. He labored to get through 3. Labored to get through those innings. Like, there was not an easy inning. The second inning was the easy inning. Cool. The other 2, he threw like 35 pitches in each of them. What are you doing? It's clear he does not have it. Get him out of the game, and you have a shot to win that game. The second they put him out there, I knew that game was over. You could see it. Everybody in the ballpark knew it. It's a 5-3 game, and you're putting a struggling pitcher back out there. For what reason? To try and save 3 outs? Stupid. It was stupid. Scott was a moron last night. There's no way to be nice about it. That is a stupid decision. Anybody with eyeballs could tell that Brian Wu was not going to find it. Was not happening. Wasn't his night. Anybody could see it. Even me when I'm watching from, 350 feet away, 300, 400 feet away, doesn't matter. I could see that Brian Wu was not going to figure that out. And Scott's sitting right there. And in a desperate attempt to save 3 outs for his bullpen, he kicked a game, which, by the way, if you look at the out-of-town scoreboard, yeah, that one hurts. So, yeah, Scott blew it. There's just really no way around it. Scott blew it last night. He wasn't the only one. There's plenty of blame to go around. But on Scott's part, he was bad. He was bad last night.
Yeah, a lot of people to blame for last night's loss. It's another game that, we'll just ball up, we'll throw it in the trash, but there's just been too many of those this year. And that's why you're painfully mediocre. That's why you're unable to get even 2 games beyond 500 without being sucked right back down. It just, yeah. On the topic of Wu, I was asked this last night a few times when, I was talking about the decision to leave him in and all that, about his pitch count, his innings count. When is he going to get shut down? Because it seems like we're getting closer to that point. I always felt like it was going to be somewhere around the trade deadline or a little bit after, because you look at this roster, you look at the Wu situation in general, that he's not going to be able to finish this season given the lack of innings that he's pitched in his professional career. That they're probably going to add a starter of some caliber. Even if it's just a Mike Leake type of guy that can just eat innings for the rest of the year, that's not going to cost you anything, is going to be gone. In the offseason. Rich Hill, right? For example, someone like that. Yeah. But when do we think that they are going to shut Wu down? Because last night, I don't want to overreact to last night, but he did look like a guy that is well past his career high in innings, and he looks like he might be. He looked tired last night. So,
yeah, who's to say if it's rust or just fatigue? Who knows?
Yeah.
About last night in particular, but. Yeah, he's probably only got 5 starts left at the most. He's already blown through his innings pitched limit and or max career high. So it's just tough to say, because you do have to kind of push him through it a little bit, because you just can't. He can't be on a progression where he throws 55 innings and then the next year he throws 80 and you shut him down. Like, he's got to push that to around 100 legitimately, so that next year he can go out and he can go to 130, 140 or whatever it is. So. You kind of have to push him through it, but at the same time, you can't really kick games like the Mariners did last night, hoping, just on the hope that he can push through this or not. So there's a way to get him his innings without hurting your club, and that's to send him down and just have him start in the minors, where you can skip him and you can do a bunch of things and still get him his innings. But I think at most it's 5 or 6 starts left, maybe 25, 30 innings, and then you probably see him shut down for a month, and then you might see him in September pitch out of the bullpen if Seattle's still in it. But yeah, I would imagine mid-August is as far as he can possibly go, and it's why the Mariners need to be involved in the starting pitching market, and not at the top of it necessarily, but they have to be involved. Like, they have to go get a Tyler Anderson type.
You just need a guy for the next 2 months. You don't need a guy that's under club control for 2024. That would be nice if you can get that guy.
Right. And if you fall out of it, right, in the next week or two before Wu runs out of innings, then yeah, you could probably just throw, Logan Allen, who they signed, or Adam Aller into the number 5 spot, because it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, Hancock, if he's still around. But assuming that they're still hovering around 500, which is a pretty good bet, then those starts probably are going to matter, because nobody is running away with that 3rd wild card spot right now. So you have to go get somebody. But yeah, I think Wu's probably got 30 innings left at most. So the time is coming.
All right. So there are some other moves that you think the Mariners should make. They might have made some moves by now. By the time that you're watching this. But we're still going to talk about those. We're going to talk about some other moves we think they should make as well in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Dave. No, not Sims or Niehaus. Dave is the banking app that's leaving the financial field. At one time or another, we've all needed a little financial help. That's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. So if you're in a pinch, get the help you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/MLB. Terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. That's dave.com/MLB. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/MLB. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. You can catch game 3 of this 4-game series between the Mariners and the Twins tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Before we get into our next topic of the show, a reminder, we are running a giveaway right now. One of our biggest giveaways yet. We are giving away tickets to each of the Mariners' 3 games against the Red Sox later this month. That's July 31st through August 2nd. Pretty good chance that you might see a new Mariner or two make their debut in Seattle with the trade deadline happening right around that time. So all you have to do to enter is subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. If you're only listening on, podcast platforms, head on over to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and leave a comment on any of our videos this week saying which day you want to go. So Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We are picking a winner for each day. So no one winner is going to get all 3 games. Sorry. But if you say Monday, we'll pick a winner for from all the comments saying Monday. If you say Tuesday, we're picking a winner from all the comments saying Tuesday, and so on and so forth. These are 2 tickets each, so you can take a friend. So if you want an extra entry, have your friend come over, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment what day you guys want to go to. And these are terrace level tickets. We are also legally required to remind you to check out the description of this episode to refer to the legalities of the whole giveaway. So, yeah. Anywho. Okay. Colby, you got some moves you think the Mariners should make. What are they?
I don't know. I've forgotten. Yeah. So funny about this is by the time you guys are listening, they probably already made some moves. So yay us.
Yeah.
But the best laid plans of mice and men. Anyways, so obviously they're going to need an arm for tonight. I think they'd be stupid if they didn't make a move in the bullpen. And you've had to cover a lot of innings the last few days because Scott has intentionally short scripted a few guys, and obviously Wu couldn't hold up his end last night, and neither really could Luis Castillo. So yeah, the bullpen has had to cover a lot of innings the last few days, and you need some fresh arms just to be able to cover innings because there's no guarantee that Castillo is going to go out tonight and give you 7, which is probably ideal at this stage, but you don't have an off day until next Monday. So you need fresh arms. I think the obvious answer here is Ty Adcock. He has thrown a ton of pitches the last 2 days. Also hasn't been very good recently, but whatever. The main thing is that he has not, he's thrown a ton of pitches the last 2 days. He is not going to be available tonight, probably not tomorrow either. And you just can't have blank spots on your roster right now. So Adcock's got to go down. There's a few guys on the 40-man. Now, normally this would be McCacken, who would just come up and eat innings, but McCacken started for Tacoma last night, so he's not an option. So you're probably looking at Adam Aller, who they just recently claimed. You're looking at the lefty that they got in the Mets deal, who nobody really cares about. You're talking Muckenhern, I think is his name.
Yep.
You could want 10 if he's healthy and ready to go. You can't do Matt Vesta unless there's an IL move. So unfortunately, you can't just bring Vesta back up. The other thing you can do is you can transfer Marco to the 60-day IL and add somebody who's not on the 40-man back to the 40-man and call them up, for Adcock. So that would be Tommy Malone probably. So yeah, there's not some great options out there. I guess you could add Diego Castillo back to the 40 man, but he has not been good. The big one here, and the one that has the chance to be the most long term, is Prolander Baroa. Shannon Dreher's already speculated that we'll see him very soon, which, I mean, yeah, well, we should. It's pretty obvious, and he's a guy who can go 2-3 innings. He's already been stretched out this year, and he has really seemed to find some, let's just say, some more control as a reliever than he did as a starter. So there's a little bit of Matt Brash to him, where there's just nasty stuff and he's just going to walk guys, and that's just kind of part of his deal. But yeah, he's more of a long-term solution. That one would be the obvious call. He's already on the 40 man as well. It's just a matter of whether or not he could get here in time. He's down in Arkansas, the travel and all that stuff. But yeah, they need to make a move there. They absolutely have to make a move in the bullpen. Maybe even two. Campbell threw 2 innings last night. Is he down tonight and tomorrow, or is it just tonight? We don't know. But that's a move that you have to consider, even though Campbell's been perfectly fine. You just can't have multiple blank bullpen spots down tonight. So yeah, they probably have to make a couple moves there in the pen. Moves that they should make, but I don't know if they will. They should DFA AJ Pollock. That's a no-brainer. And they should call up Cade Marlowe now. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like that's going to happen today, because Marlowe was in the lineup for the Rainiers at a 12 o'clock first pitch time. So I guess it's technically possible that he could play 2 games today, or he can just, drive up I-5 or whatever and get to the ballpark and be activated today, but it seems unlikely. But you should DFA Pollock. Absolutely should. And you should call up. Almost doesn't matter because they're probably going to provide more for you than AJ Pollock is at this stage. Marlowe would be my first option. He's already on the 40 man as well. But Taylor Trammell's also on the 40 man. Sam Haggerty's on the 40 man. And again, if you're DFAing Pollock like you should, you're going to automatically open up a 40 man spot. So even Jake Shiner and Mason McCoy and Zach DeLoach, these guys also could make sense for that roster spot. So it's really 40 man doesn't matter if you're DFAing Pollock. And then the other one that I would strongly consider is DFAing Colton Wong and claiming Rougned Odor, who was just recently DFA'd by the Padres. I know Ty hates him for reasons unknown, but he is a 99 WRC plus bat against right-handed pitching, who does have an 11% walk rate and just a 21% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. 99 is not good. It is 1% below league average, but Colton Wong's WRC plus is like 30. So it is a significant upgrade. And then the idea there would just be to platoon him and Caballero at second base. If you don't want to go that route because you don't think your clubhouse can handle Rougned Odor being on your roster for a couple weeks, it says a lot more about your clubhouse than you think, but whatever. Then yeah, I guess you could just stick with Colton Wong for a while because it's worked out so well.
Right. We've talked about, I think it was maybe Monday's show or one of our recent shows, about just rolling with the unknown, because what Colton Wong is. What AJ Pollock is. That Dylan Moore, the other game against the Tigers notwithstanding, what was that, on Friday against the Tigers, notwithstanding, does not look capable of hitting major league pitching with any sort of consistency right now, because again, what the deal is. I've gone over that multiple times. Dylan Moore, just send him down to AAA, let him get the at-bats that he needs, and reassess either towards the end of the year. If you're out of it, then fine. I don't care. You can bring him back up, let him play every day for all I care at that point, or in 2024, because he needs time right now, and you cannot afford to give him time. So you already know what all those things are, right? So, maybe Zach DeLoach or Jake Shiner or Sam Haggerty or Taylor Trammell isn't going to be an upgrade over any of those guys, but they're not going to be worse. I can tell you that, because you quite literally cannot be worse. You quite literally cannot give the Mariners less than what AJ Pollock and Colton Wong and Dylan Moore are giving them right now. So that's the extent of it. By the way, you mentioned Zach Muckenhern, the left-handed reliever of the Mariners, acquired from the Mets a couple of weeks ago for Chris Flexen and Trevor Gott. Remember the response from Mariners Twitter about trading Trevor Gott? Oh, You paid $4 million, or you traded away a good reliever to get $4 million off of your books, even though that Chris Flexen had already been DFA'd and they had already made peace with essentially paying that money, whatever. Right. Well, I saw a wonderful screenshot from Luke on Twitter at Mariners_Luke of Mets fans reacting to Trevor Gott, who apparently got shelled last night by the Chicago White Sox. And there are quotes here like, Billy Epler was willing to eat Chris Flexen's contract to get Trevor Gott. There's no way Epler should be anywhere near this team after October 1st. $4 million for Trevor Gott. Is Billy Epler a saboteur? Stuff like that. So
things are going well.
Yeah. So maybe the Mariners didn't necessarily trade a good reliever just to shave $4 million off their books, even though that, again, they had already made peace with doing that. Just the Mets were, came in at the 11th hour and said, you know what? We'll take the $4 million off of your hands if you give us Trevor Gott. So,
yep.
Something to think about. Just saying. All right. So we're going to talk about this Mariners Cardinals trade rumor that just won't die. John Morosi won't let it die. But even though that it's mostly Morosi that is pushing that, it does make some sense, right? There are some bats that the Cardinals have that totally make sense for the Mariners in 2024 and beyond. It's just what the speculated costs of those bats are doesn't make sense for the Mariners at all. We've gone over that time and time again. But we're going to look at an alternative solution for the Mariners to potentially land one of those bats from the Cardinals in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Sleeper. Are you using the Sleeper app for daily fantasy baseball? Want to times your money by 100? Sleeper is now offering up to a 100 times payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big. If you think Julio's going yard, add him to your lineup. If you think Bryce Miller's striking out 6 or more, add him to your lineup. Making your picks is easy and takes only 30 seconds or less. And if you win, you can withdraw your payouts safe and quickly. Use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Again, game 3 of this series between the Mariners and the Twins is on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Catch all the action over there. Colby, let's talk about the Cardinals and the Mariners for the 11th millionth time on this show. But we have a different way that we want to tackle this topic, right? Because again, trading Brian Wu or Bryce Miller or Logan Gilbert for really any of the bats that the Cardinals are going to realistically trade. We're not talking about Goldschmidt. We're not talking about Arenado. We're not talking about Jordan Walker. We're not talking about those guys. Guys that they would realistically trade, that's a non-starter for us. Wu, Miller, Gilbert, we're not doing it. Just flat out, no. However, I think, I think that Lars Nootbaar is being massively overrated, right? Nootbaar is a good player, but I think his max, his ceiling is probably a 3-win player, which is a good player. That helps you. That might even, he might even be an all-star one year, right? But that's still not worth Brian Wu or Bryce Miller or Logan Gilbert, who are either established middle of the rotation guys or are already showing you that they can be that or even more at the major league level right now. So, as for how those guys should be properly valued, I think there's still a way to make that happen. So my idea here is essentially getting a third team involved. And while I don't like this term, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because the Mariners right now, as they continue to just hover around 500, it's becoming more and more clear that they're going to both buy and sell at the trade deadline. So if they're going to do that, instead of getting just prospects back for Paul Sewald, Teoscar Hernandez, Tom Murphy, etc., why not just get you something that can help you in 2024 in a significant way? Now, they're not going to be able to trade any of those guys to the Cardinals, but if you get a third team involved, someone who is buying, someone that might have a pitcher that is maybe not on the same level as Wu or Miller, but is at least slightly better than Emerson Hancock, that maybe you could at least package that guy with Hancock and maybe whatever else to get the deal across the finish line. Flip those guys to the Cardinals for the bat that you want. So before we get into, I have a couple of, they're not fully fleshed out trades. They're just more like rough outlines of deals that I think the Mariners can make. Before we get into those, Colby, what do you think just overall about the idea of getting a third team involved here to try and land that bat from the Cardinals, and how feasible do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's pretty feasible because, again, there are a lot of buyers. It is definitely a seller's market. So, if the Mariners are looking to buy and sell, they can just do both at the same time because their most expendable pieces are, Sewald and Teoscar. And so, but you're not going to trade those two guys for a bat from a contender that makes sense for you beyond, 2024. So, yeah, I think the idea is essentially it's just it's a standard 3-team trade. Like, I have something that both contenders will want and sellers would want, but I want to maximize my window. So I'm going to basically pawn off the cost of me as a buyer to another contender, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what you're doing is,
yeah,
we're going to split the cost of me buying by me selling at the same time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's something that, we haven't seen a ton of 3-team trades with Jerry. But I do think it's something that he's more than open to. They're just rare in general. So
right.
yeah, I think it's probably a good idea. And I was thinking last night, because I wasn't willing to do anything besides watch that travesty, I was thinking, there's a pretty good chance that the Mariners' biggest trade is a 3-team deal because of the way the circumstances are right now, where it is a seller's market, but the Mariners are both buyers and sellers. So how do you take advantage of that? By doing both in the same deal.
Right. So the Cardinals have outright said they want pitching, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a steep drop off between Brian Wu and Emerson Hancock. So again, this is our attempt to explore the possibility of landing a guy that at least fits somewhere in between those two guys. So here are a couple of ideas that I have. Again, these are just rough outlines. These aren't fully fleshed out trades, but there's one common denominator here, and that's Paul Sewald. The other idea here, and why we have two teams or two separate trades involved here, is because one involves Tom Murphy, the other involves Teoscar Hernandez, in addition to Paul Sewald. So the first deal here is an idea, is partly an idea that was brought up by a friend of the show, Joe Doyle. Again, this wasn't exactly my trade idea, but I was trying to take his idea and turn it into something a little bit bigger here. I forget exactly where he talked about this. Maybe it was just in the Baseball Things Slack, which, by the way, you guys should definitely sign up for and join Jason Churchill's Baseball Things podcast over on Patreon. You can join a Slack, join a community through that. It's really cool. But he had the idea of trading Paul Sewald and Tom Murphy to the Marlins. That team really needs catching help and could use some bullpen help as well, for Xavier Edwards and Jake Eder, left-handed pitching prospect, who is not like significantly better than Emerson Hancock, but he is better. He's not a top 100 guy, but he's better than Hancock. So the idea here is to pair Eder with Hancock, flip them to the Cardinals, along with maybe someone like Alberto Rodriguez or Jonathan Clase or Las Montes. It doesn't really matter. Just think of a Mariners prospect in that range, pick him. Doesn't matter to me. Mariners get to keep Xavier Edwards, and they also get, for the sake of the example, Lars Nootbaar or Dylan Carlson, while the Marlins get Paul Sewald and Tom Murphy. The other deal here that I have up on the screen, Sewald and Teoscar to the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks could use some bullpen help. They definitely need another corner outfielder. Alec Thomas, Jake McCarthy, those guys are just not giving them enough offensively right now. Cardinals get Blake Walson, who again is kind of in that Jake Eder range, where he's better than Hancock, but he's also not like a top 100 guy. So that's why you would still pair him with Emerson Hancock. And then I have the Cardinals also getting maybe like Dominic Fletcher out of it, outfielder from the Diamondbacks. So I know Colby wants Fletcher on the Mariners in this deal, and maybe the Cardinals are getting too much here. That's up for debate here. But the Mariners would also, get again Nootbaar or Carlson in this example.
I'd rather have Fletcher than Clase, so
Sure.
I'll tack on Clase on my end, and I will keep Fletcher.
Sure. If you want to do that.
Yeah. Another team that this makes sense for is Tampa. They also could use Paul Sewald and Teoscar Hernandez.
The problem with Tampa is
not a lot of pitching.
Yeah, well, they do, but most of the pitchers that fit the criteria we're looking for here are hurt. And we're talking like not, hamstring, not, a blister, not like elbow issues. Right. Like Shane Baz seems perfect for this, but he has significant elbow issues right now. So that's not an option. So that's kind of where that stalls out. So yeah, again, I don't have a perfect answer here. The Marlins and the Diamondbacks are kind of the two closest, but again, you're not going to be able to get a Brian Wu level pitcher, a Bryce Miller level pitcher from either of these teams. I don't think. What's up? You're holding up your finger.
Yeah. Divish tweeted 9 minutes ago, which, right around the time we started having this conversation, surprise.
Right.
Thanks, StreamYard. That both Devin Sweet and Prolander Baroa are in the Mariners clubhouse right now.
Devin Sweet. Are you finally getting it, Colby?
Are you finally getting that taxi squad? We've been fooled by taxi squads before.
True. Prolander Baroa was on the taxi squad before.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we had to wait an extra day for who's it that Joe caught flack for not he didn't called up that day. He got called up the next day.
Wrongly got caught flack for. It was.
It's another reliever.
110. It was 110.
Yeah, it's 110. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll see if that's a move. You guys will probably know before you finish listening to this. Again, thanks StreamYard. Yeah. So I do like these ideas. I feel like it's probably not enough for Nootbaar, but I'm also a Carlson fan. I think we talked about this on CTZ. Maybe a little bit here on Locked On.
Patreon.com/control zone.
Sometimes we get the topics mixed up a little bit, but yeah, I think it was on Monday's episode of CTZ that, we kind of did a deeper dive on Carlson and I think there's more. I think there's more to Carlson. Sure. So I would trade Hancock for Carlson. Absolutely. I would. So I like these ideas.
The idea with pairing Eater with Hancock again, because you're not going to be able to land a Brian Wu level pitcher from any of these teams, from either of these teams, right? Especially for what you're giving up. But maybe for the Cardinals, while they're not going to get that kind of pitcher back, getting 2 shots instead of 1 on a pitcher who has probability, at least, like Emerson Hancock, to be, a number 5 at the very least at the major league level, getting 2 shots on guys like that, maybe that's valuable enough. Maybe that makes up the difference. And maybe adding in a prospect that they like a Jonathan Clase or an Alberto Rodriguez or whoever, makes up the difference in the cost and allows them to comfortably, send out Lars Nootbaar or Dylan Carlson to you. Yeah. This idea could also be applied to, Brendan Donovan, right? Or Nolan Gorman or whatever. Though I like Carlson or Nootbaar more than those guys personally.
I don't think you're getting those guys without giving up Gilbert, and no. So
probably not. Yeah, probably.
And maybe Paul DeYoung is a guy that the Cardinals want to get rid of, and you solve your second base situation that way, and blah blah blah. But yeah, I think just as the framework, these are good ideas, and separately, I would make these if I was trading Teoscar and Sewald to Arizona just by themselves, I would take that prospect package. And that's kind of what you're looking for, right? It is right. Okay, we're going to get these prospects, but now we're going to turn around and try and flip them at the same time. It's basically Malik Smith, right? Which is essentially a 3-team deal, but because there was a slight delay, it just ended up being 2 separate deals, blah, blah, blah. But that's essentially what we're looking at here. So yeah, I like them, and we're no longer tempting fate to get to the wrap up.
Let's do it. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANE GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day. We'll see you next time. Peace.